Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to learn more about the Atlantic Immigration Program. My name is Angela Verzosa. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant and the founder and managing director of AV Immigration and Visa Services Incorporated. I'm also an active member of the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants, who's the official regulatory board that issues licenses for immigration consultants like me. So for today, I'll use the first maybe 30 to 40 minutes to cover how AIP or Atlantic Immigration Program really works for workers in Canada, which jobs and employers actually qualify, how the endorsement actually happens, and some of the costly mistakes that can cause refusals later on when you submit your PR application to IRCC. So after that, we will again utilize the remaining of the time to answer some questions if you have any before we wrap up. We'll also focus today on standard eligibility criteria to provide information. But of course, if you have specific questions unique to your specific case, or you want personalized discussion and advice, you can always reach out to us. We offer a free 15-minute consultation related to permanent residence program discussion. We'll be happy to attend to you and provide you the rightful advice based on your current situation. Okay, so before we proceed today, I have Jasmine with me who will be providing assistance throughout. So, Jasmine, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Jasmine, and I am the Marketing and Communications Admin here at AV Immigrations and Visa Services Inc. I will be providing assistance for today, and I hope you have fun for today's webinar. Sit tight and hang tight. Refrain from unmuting your mic to not disrupt the flow of Miss Angela. So, all the questions will be answered later, and I hope you guys have fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's move on to the next slide, Jazz. All right. So just a bit of information about myself and AV immigration. In addition to being licensed as an RCIC, I also graduated from Queen's University in immigration and citizenship law. If this is your first time joining our free webinar, to give everyone a bit of context, I'm speaking to you today from the beautiful community of Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, where our practice is proudly based. For those unfamiliar, we're located about a 7 hour drive north of Toronto and just about 30 minutes from the International Bridge connecting us to the Michigan state in the United States. So over the years, I've worked personally with clients from many different countries and immigration situations. Although our office is based in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, we actually provide support to clients Canada, outside Canada, within and outside Canada. Okay, so at AV Immigration, our focus is actually personalized immigration strategy. We don't believe in one size fits all immigration plans. Every person's background, experience, and goals are different. So we do believe that pathways need to be tailored. We work heavily with PR pathways like express entry, provincial nomination programs, rural community immigration pilot programs, Atlantic immigration, which is what we'll be covering today. Clients move from, again, being a temporary resident to a full permanent resident successfully. Okay, next slide, Jess. Okay, thank you. The blue. Okay, perfect. So today's session is actually session 3 of the five webinar series that we're hosting this year, we have already covered OINP and RCIP in the previous weeks. If you missed those valuable and impactful session, you can actually go to our Facebook, our social media to try and view the recording of those sessions. Today, we're tackling the AIP. And again, next week, we'll be covering express entry with my colleague in the field, Eve from BN Borderless Immigration Services Incorporated. And then finally, the last webinar that we will be hosting will be the week after that, where we will be covering the federal stage PR application process with another colleague of mine, Gabrielle, from Services d'Immigration Clavel, Canada. So she will be joining us towards the very last webinar session. So again, if tonight sparks a lot of questions, which I think will, future sessions will go into even more detail. So we would like to invite you ahead of that. Um, sign up forms will be posted in our social media. So just follow us on our social media, and these information will be uploaded in there. Okay. Next slide, Jazz. Okay, so let's now move on to starting the Atlantic Immigration Program discussion. Next slide. Okay, so all right, so let's now talk about the Atlantic Immigration Program, or what they call AIP. This program is actually designed to attract skilled workers and international graduates to Canada's four Atlantic provinces. So again, as you can see in here, we have included the list of the provinces that's included in this program. We have New Brunswick, Newfoundland and Labrador, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island. So the AIP actually provides a clear pathway to permanent residency for qualified applicants, helping to address labor shortages and stimulate economic growth in these regions. So we're going to go over some of the key highlights of this program shortly, but in essence, this specific program is actually created and supported by the federal program, IRCC, because they wanted to address the local labor shortages on these provinces, and at the same time attract skilled workers to actually live permanently in these specific provinces as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the AIP is focused on, again, permanent residency for those who meet a specific eligibility criteria, which include having the right work experience, education, language proficiency, and sufficient settlement funds if applicable. Okay, so we'll talk about that later, and who needs a settlement funds and how much will that look like. A key feature of this program is that it addresses, again, the needs of the employers in these Atlantic provinces who are looking to fill certain positions that contribute to the region's growth. And these are typically positions that they're having a hard time or difficult time filling locally. So the program is not just about filling labor gaps. It's also about creating a community of skilled individuals who can thrive in the Atlantic provinces. So if you meet these criteria, again, you could be on your way to permanent residency. We just need to clarify certain criteria and know exactly what the process is, so you can start that process. Okay, so let's talk about the program criteria next. Okay, so here, to qualify for the Atlantic Immigration Program, the applicant will need to meet the following criteria. Okay, so the first one here is the work experience that I'd like to highlight. You need to have a qualifying work experience, unless, again, you're an international graduate from a recognized post-secondary institution in one of the Atlantic provinces. We'll go over each of these criteria in a more deeper discussion in a bit, but I'll go through it quickly for now. Next is the education. So again, you must meet or exceed the educational requirements based on a specific NOC category. And then the language proficiency, you will need to meet or exceed the language requirements as well. So again, typically you're going to be required to have an English or a French language assessment to support your application. And then again, settlement funds. You must show, of course, that you have enough money to support yourself and your family once you arrive in Canada. Now, if you're already living and working in Canada on a valid work permit, you're not required to provide proof of funds. Okay. So let's talk more about the work experience next. Okay. So, for AIP, you must have at least 1,560 hours of work experience obtained in the last 5 years. So 1,560, that's equivalent to 1 year of total work experience. Um, and again, that's also equivalent to at least 30 hours weekly over the full 52 weeks within a year. Okay. The work also must be paid. So that means no volunteer work is accepted or no unpaid internship will be considered as valid work experience. And it must fall within the National Occupation Classification Code or a proper tier category. It could be a tier 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And again, if you're an international graduate from an Atlantic Canada institution, you may be exempt from the actual work experience requirement if you meet specific criteria related to your education and residency. So I'll talk more about that shortly, but just to highlight in this specific slide, one major key item to take note for Atlantic Immigration Program is that for the 1,560 hours, you can actually include work experiences gained while you are still a student if you started out as a student in Canada. So typically in most programs such as Express Entry or other provincial nomination program, you can only count work experiences after you finished your study program. However, here at Atlantic Immigration, even work experience as a student counts, and you can count that to form or to complete the total of 1 year work experience that you need to actually qualify for the program. So, which is really good. So, it means there's no restriction around that. Okay. So now let's talk about the exemption. If, say, for example, you're a graduate or an international graduate in those four provinces. Okay. So here, as you can see, your degree or diploma or trade certification must be from a recognized post-secondary institution. Um, it has to be a program with a program duration of at least 2 years. So what that means is it has to be you can't have like a 1 year college certificate or a 1 year graduate certificate to qualify. You need to have say a 2 year diploma program, which can qualify here. Okay. Um, Also, it should be a program that you've taken as a full-time student, which means again, that's why when you apply for this program, they would ask for your transcript of records because they want to see and make sure that you are a full-time student. You're not a part-time student taking in two classes at a time per semester. Has to be fully loaded based on the curriculum of the program that you enroll. Okay. Of course, you need to be there's also a residency requirement in here, as you can see in the third bullet in here. It says you should have lived in one of the province or Atlantic province for at least 16 months in the 2 years before graduation. So, meaning if your total of program is a total of 2 years, within that 2 year period, you should have been physically in the Atlantic province for a total of 16 months. So, how do you prove this? Of course, you want to make sure that you have lease agreements that can support your residency any billing statements that can prove that you are within that region during that time. If you have other part-time employment that requires you to be physically in the actual location, you can add that in there as well. Um, you need to have visa or permit that you need to work, study, or get training while you were in Canada. So, of course, you need to have legal status as part of the requirement, which is actually a requirement in most of the programs to participate. Okay. Next, we'll talk about the education requirement for the program. So, what's unique about the Atlantic Immigration Program is there is a difference in terms of the requirement for education depending on the type of job offer or tier level that you're working. So, say for example, those that are on a tier 0 or 1, you are required to have at least 1 year Canadian post-secondary credential or an equivalent from outside Canada. So for those in tier 2, 3, or 4, you'll need at least a Canadian high school um, diploma or its equivalent for you to qualify. So if you studied in Canada, you are absolutely required to provide an education credential assessment, or what we call ECA. And the assessment must be less than 5 years old for it to be valid. The actual assessment must meet the specific requirement of education that's needed in here. Now, if you're a graduate in Canada, you don't need to get an ECA. You don't need to get your foreign education assessed because you can submit your Canadian credentials. You just need to make sure you have a copy of your diploma and the official transcript of record from your school or institution to be included as part of the application. Okay. So next, the language requirement. So similar to the work experience requirement, the language the level of the language CLB level is also going to be based off the actual job offer that you have. So if you are holding a job offer under tiers 0, 1, 2, 3, you are required to have at least a score of CLB 5 or better for your language assessment. Um, However, if you have a job offer for tier 4 occupations, then CLB 4 is the target for that specific job offer. Now, there are different institutions that you could utilize to get your language assessed. Most famous or popular ones that's being used is the IELTS language test and CELPIP. Um, just be just just note that the language test, it has to be valid for 2 years for it to be for it to be submitted and used as part of the application. Any language test that's been taken over 2 years is not a valid report at this point. So you have to make sure that you retake your test or retest and get a new report for it to be included in this application. Another reminders that I would like to include in this specific area is identifying the right CLB level for your specific report. So I noticed that there's a lot of candidates where when you look at the average, because when you receive your report, there is an average score in there. That average score is not your CLB level. Okay, so it's just the average score was that's based off the actual result that you have, but that does not mean that that's your CLB level. For you to know your specific CLB level, you have to look at the chart. There's one that's available in the IRCC website, particularly the CLB level, the correct CLB level identification for IELTS result. CELPIP, it's not an issue because whatever is your score, that's your CLB level. So if you see under listening, you have a score of 7, then your CLB 7 there. However, for IELTS, if you look at your scoring, if it shows 5, that does not mean that you're CLB 5. You could potentially be CLB 6 or CLB 7, depending on the language ability that's being measured. So you have to make sure that you look at the table available in the IRCC website for a more accurate conversion. Okay. So that's the language requirement. Next, we'll talk about the settlement funds. Okay. So applicants must show that you do have enough money to support yourself and your family upon arriving in Canada. And the required amount is based on what you can see on this slide. It's 12.5% of the LICO based on family size. So what that means is, so say for example, if you're applying on your own, then the required proof of funds would be for one person is 3,815. However, say for example, you're applying with yourself, your spouse, and maybe say two children, then that's the count would be four. So your total would be $7,090. Okay. So again, earlier I did say that if you're already in Canada working and you have a valid work permit, then you're exempted from providing settlement funds. However, you're never exempted from the officer's measurement. Excuse me, my throat is really scratchy today because I have a cough. So I apologize. Um so anyways, for the settlement funds, if say for example you do have your family, uh if you're already in Canada, you don't need a settlement fund. But when the IRCC officer reviews your application on the federal stage, even if you're exempted from the settlement funds, they will still assess your capability um economically. So they would always measure your economic establishment in Canada. So what that means is, if you have a spouse, they're also working, it's best to include their employer letters, their notice of assessment, their T4s to show that they're also economically established in Canada. Or if you have any bank statements, savings, checking account, anything, even if it's very modest in amount, you still want to include that as part of the application to show that you're economically established as well. Okay, so that's the settlement funds. So the next one, okay, so once you meet the criteria for the work experience, education, language proficiency, and the settlement funds, the next step is, of course, to find a designated employer. So designated employers are actually those that have been approved by the province to hire candidates under the AIP program. So for more information on job opportunities, my recommendation is for you to visit the provincial websites of, again, New Brunswick, Newfoundland and Labrador, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island. The job offer you secure must, again, meet the specific requirements, including being a full-time, non-seasonal, and be suitable for you in terms of skills. So we'll talk more about that shortly. Now, the designated employer, this is very important because if you find an employer, even if your job is qualified, and even if yourself is qualified, you meet all the requirements. If your employer is not designated, unfortunately, they will not be able to move forward with the endorsement of your application to the province. It is very important that you want to make sure that this step is confirmed. How you The best way to do it is to actually go to the provincial website. There's typically a lot of there's typically a PDF file that would show who are the designated employers within the province. So you can definitely check it out, see if your specific employer is designated before you even pursue a specific job posting. So what I typically advise my clients around this is you can go ahead and apply as usual. Go to Indeed, LinkedIn, Job Bank of Canada to try and find for opportunities. But then once you find a specific job or opportunity, what you can do is to check what the actual employer's name. And then once you get the employer name, you can then try to search that employer name to see if, they are designated. Okay. Okay, so let's now talk about the job offer requirements. So let's just take a look at this for a bit. So again, when you find an employer or a job then that you want to pursue, these are the things that you want to take note of when you're trying to finalize if this job offer will meet the requirements for Atlantic immigration. First, the job offer must be full time. So what that means is, again, the number of hours being offered is at least at the minimum 30 hours per week. Okay. Next is non-seasonal. So the job must provide consistent year-round employment. So this is not a job that's only available during summer or only during the fall. And then there's a break before then you can continue working again. So you have to make sure that you're working through the year, 365 days. Again, of course, minus the holidays, and the days off. But ultimately, you have to be able to demonstrate that you're working throughout the year, 30 hours a week, 52 weeks in a year. Okay. So again, trying to find out if the job is suitable for you. So the job should be one that you can perform and are likely to accept based on the tier level. So as you can see here, tier 0, 1, 2, or 3, the job must again last for at least 1 year after becoming a permanent resident. And then if it is a tier 4 occupation, the job must be permanent with no set end dates. Now the job offer cannot come from a company where you or your spouse are a majority owner, and the job must match your qualifying work experience unless you're an international graduate with the work experience exemption, which we have covered earlier on. Now, I want to talk more about the area here about the requirement on the type of job offer. So again, as you can see for tiers 0, 1, 2, or 3, the only requirement is the job must be available and offered to you up until 1 year after you become a permanent resident. So, and that, however, for tier 4, it has to be permanent with no set end dates. So there's a lot of discussion that's happening around this area, specifically the timing. Because again, with IRCC's processing time not very stable, sometimes, within a year, you can get a full permanent residency approved. Sometimes it can take longer. So just to avoid technicalities around this, I would always recommend, if you can, to secure a full-time job offer with no end date, even if you're working on tiers 0, 1, 2, or 3. Because it's going to be a gamble if, say, for example, you try and calculate and say, okay, I have a job offer. My job offer is good for 3 years. So it seems like, I work as under tier 2. Seems like this job offer will work out because, again, um, the job offer, the endorsement process to the province can take 3 months, 3 to 4 months. And then the application process for PR processing maybe can take a year, year and a half. So it's within 3 years, no issues. Then I will go ahead and accept. But then something happened throughout the process. There are certain delays that are beyond your control that could add to some of multiple delays that you did not expect as part of the planning. So to avoid cases like that, I would just recommend to, find something that's more permanent with no end date. So at least whatever happens throughout the process, you won't have those unnecessary stress of thinking, do I need to find a new employer? What's going to happen to my application now that I don't meet this requirement because I don't have enough time anymore? Okay. So now let's talk about the job offer requirement, the tier level alignment. Okay, so this is a good slide because a lot of people are actually asking, okay, so if, say, for example, you're a cook, you're a line cook, do you need to find a job offer as a line cook for you to use the work experience? So in this case, a line cook is say for, I do not have the NOC memorized for a line cook, but let's just say that a line cook is tier 3 or tier 2. If I think tier 2 for a baker, but say you're a baker, if you're a tier 2, if your job offer is under, say, tier 2, any position that's tier 2, um any of your work experience that's tier 2, 3, or 4, you can use to calculate and form that total of 1 year work experience required to support your application. So what that means is you can have, say, line cook work experience for 6 months, and then a baker position for 6 months. Even if baker and line cook differs in tier level, I think the baker is tier 2 and the line cook is tier 3. You can use both tier 2 and 3 combination to um to support the job offer that you're accepting for a tier 2 occupation. So say it's also a baker position. Um, but again, it does not always follow like that. It could be a totally different position for as long as it's tier 2. You can still use the baker and the line cook position for as long as those two would total a 1 year work experience. Another clarification that I want to do here is the work experience does not need to be work experience that you gain in the Atlantic province. So what that means is, again, any work experience obtained in the last 5 years, whether in the Atlantic province, whether it's in another province in Canada, or even outside Canada, you can use to support your application. And remember earlier I did discuss and mentioned earlier that if, say, for example, you entered Canada as a student, even the work experiences gained as a student can be used to support your application for Atlantic immigration. It's not like express entry or a typical provincial nomination program where they would only accept work experiences obtained after you complete your study or your program. In Atlantic, even work experience as a student can count. So which is really good. Okay. So next, all right. So now I want to take just a few moments to walk you through the Atlantic immigration program process, step by step. So again, you clearly understand who does what and when. One of the biggest mistakes applicants make is, again, misunderstanding the sequence, and actually that can lead to delays or refusals. Okay. So the first step here, as you can see, is the employer submits your application to the province. So the process begins with the designated employer, again, not the worker, because sometimes some applicants think they can do the actual application themselves. No, that is not the case. This is an employer-driven program. Your employer has to submit your application to the province. Okay, so the designated employer will have to submit your application. So once you receive a valid job offer, your employer then prepares and submits the endorsement application to the Atlantic province where the job is located. So this package would typically include, just so you have an idea, your job offer, the settlement plan, the supporting employer documents, and at this stage, the province is also assessing whether both the employer and the position being hired for is actually meeting the AIP requirements. So we've talked about all those requirements earlier. So just an important reminder as well. Again, just want to highlight it again. The applicant cannot submit this step independently. It must come from the designated employer. So again, some would try to attempt to send their own application, which is again a big mistake because the province won't probably even entertain your application at that stage. Okay. Step two is employer would receive the endorsement certificate once they submit. So once they submit it to the province would process. The province will then release an endorsement certificate letter to the employer. And then, of course, the employer will then share that to you as an employee or an applicant. So you can use that certificate to move on and apply. Okay. So if the province, so at this stage, the endorsement certificate release, if the province is satisfied, say they issue the endorsement certificate to the employer and the applicant. So again, as you know, this is a key milestone at this stage, but take note that it is not the permanent residence approval yet. What endorsement means is that the province supports your application to move forward to the federal stage. So IRCC will still conduct its own full assessment after you submit your PR application. So at this stage, you're just clearing the stage for the province level. Okay. Third step, of course, the applicant will then submit the PR, the permanent residence application to IRCC. So after endorsement is issued, the responsibility now shifts to the applicant. Or again, if you have a consultant or you hired someone to represent your case, this is when they can step in and assist you to move forward with the next steps and application process. So you must now submit your permanent residence application to IRCC within the validity period of the endorsement. So typically, the endorsement certificate is valid for a full year. Of course, you don't want to wait for the full year to actually submit your PR application. The actual endorsement certificate, it's not an award. It's not a certificate that you post on your wall or you print out and put in your office to brag about. It's something that you need to move forward and get that permanent residency going. So at the federal stage, officers will then review again your work experience. You're going to check again the education. Do you meet it? Your language results, your proof of funds if it is required, and the genuineness of the job offer. This is also where many applications succeed or fail, depending on the document quality and alignment. So for the last step, as you can see in here, the applicant may now apply for an AIP work permit as well. So again, this is an optional step once you have submitted your PR application. So while your PR application is being processed, you may have this option to apply for an AIP work permit. So this is an employer-specific work permit. So what that means is if you decide to apply for a work permit using your endorsement certificate, you will be provided with an employer specific work permit, which means you can only work with the employer that actually endorsed you for the program. Again, at least up until you get the permanent residency application, you're tied to the employer until then. So this step is optional, but again, very strategic if you need it. It is especially useful if, say, for example, you're outside Canada, you want to go to Canada sooner, you need to start working sooner, or maybe you need to maintain legal status. What that means is, so say, for example, you only have 2 months, 3 months, a couple of months left remaining in your authorized stay or permit in Canada, and you need it to be extended so you can maintain your status and continue working in Canada. So this is what you can use. Um, Again, work permit, just like what I said, it's employer specific and it does require some endorsement or support from your employer. So what that means is, should you decide to move forward, your employer must register your offer of employment to the IRCC employer portal pay the compliance fee of $230, and then give you a reference number. And that reference number you would include in your work permit application, which would signify that your application is actually LMIA exempt as part of the Atlantic Immigration Program. Okay, so some key takeaways from this specific discussions. Again, the Atlantic Immigration Program, it is a coordinated three-party process, just like what we've discussed. There's the employer, there's the province, and then IRCC. So success really depends on proper alignment at every stage. And again, not just getting a job offer, because I think a lot of people would think as soon as they get a job offer, it's that easy. No, there's a lot of additional steps that needs to be carried out as part of the process for the for you to be actually successful in this program. Okay. Next slide, common refusals. So I'm not going to go through all of this because some of it are quite straightforward, but I'm just going to highlight some of the items that's unique to the Atlantic Immigration Program. So one here is, again, your employer is not properly designated. So again, this is one of the top refusal triggers that can actually happen for AIP. So this issue may include your employer not designated at the time of the endorsement. So some employers would think, okay, I'm going to start the employer designation process. While that's ongoing, let me go ahead and endorse this candidate ahead of time. So that's a big mistake. You need the program is very specific. You have to have an employer that's designated before they can actually start the endorsement. Another trigger factor would be that the designation is actually expired or had been revoked. So you want to make sure that they have their designation is still active before they can proceed with the endorsement. Excuse me. And then, of course, there are some issues around non-compliance with program requirements like history. So maybe your specific employer had endorsed prior, and then there were some cases of non-compliance that were discovered by the province. So now they are not able to endorse more candidates because they're prevented by the province itself. Okay. Other issues, let me look at the list. We have job offer not meeting the AIP requirements. So again, we're very clear with the requirements, full-time, non-seasonal. The tier level must, if there are some tier level mismatch with your candidate background, remember the tier alignment table that I've shown you earlier. You have to make sure you have that. Total 1 year work experience. Um, the job location, it must be in the Atlantic Canada. It can't be a branch outside Atlantic. Um, and then it has to be full time. So it can be contract for 6 months or 8 months. Some endorsement problems, such as, again, incomplete endorsement package, settlement plan is missing or it's weak. So if you're a candidate for Atlantic Immigration, your employer is actually required to endorse you to a local settlement services. So what that does is you're connected to the settlement service team locally. They will meet with you, they'll schedule a meeting with you. You'll outline your needs. If you have family coming with you, you have to include their names in that settlement plan, which is also required. And then that a whole settlement plan package must be included in the actual endorsement to the province for it to be accepted by the province for processing. Um, and then um, work experience does not qualify. So again, has to be 1 year obtained in the last 5 years, matching NOC. Education requirements not met. So just be very careful. You have to make sure you have the actual documents to support the education. Sometimes you really meet the education requirement, but then the documents provided are not enough. You don't have your ECA, or your ECA, or education credential assessment has expired, or your Canadian education was not fully supported. You have provided your diploma and your transcript of record was just downloaded from your own student portal. So that's not accepted. It has to be a transcript of record officially, an official copy from the registrar to be accepted. Again, simple things like that can actually throw off your application. Language results, again, incorrect reading of the language results. So just like what I said, especially for IELTS, a lot of people are just committing mistakes around that, thinking they are this level when they're not because of some misunderstanding around the conversion. So just make sure that's right. Proof of funds. Make sure that that's included, settlement plan concerns, genuineness, and again, misrepresentation or inconsistency. So here, even small discrepancies can actually trigger refusal or again a 5-year ban. Okay. Examples, if you have different job duties across documents. So one document says you're this, another document stating mentioning the same work but a different job date title this time, incorrect work date. So you've declared a specific date that your employment duration is from this date to this date, but then the actual work document says otherwise or different dates. Some undisclosed refusals or refusal history in the past, very important. You have to make sure those are all disclosed and included. um Inconsistent personal history can also be a trigger, right? So again, AIP is not just employer driven. Just like what I said, it is a 3-layer assessment. So you have the province who will do the endorsement. IRCC does the eligibility, and then IRCC will also conduct the admissibility and genuineness of your application. So missing alignment in any layer of the step process can actually lead to refusal, which is what we want to avoid. Okay. And the next slide. Okay, so now that we've covered the program pathways, I'll talk just briefly about AV immigration and how we can support you professionally. So we provide full service guidance for all major Canadian permanent residency pathways. That includes express entry, rural, community immigration program, provincial nomination, and Atlantic immigration. So we do create or review your express entry profile to make sure it's optimized for success. Once you receive your invitation to apply or your provincial endorsement, community certificate, we prepare and submit your PR application to IRCC. We also provide complimentary coaching to explore other potential PR pathways that might suit your situation. So you're never leaving options on the table. For employer-driven programs like AIP, RCIP, we have complementary employer support as well. We provide direct employer coaching if needed for them to understand the endorsement requirements as well to help you out. And then, of course, our agreements are clear. It is going to be active for 3 years from the date that you sign with us. We have structured payment milestones as well, and each support or professional package can actually be upgraded if you want to include additional programs or support. So here at AV Immigration, we don't just submit applications, we strategically guide you through every step, helping you avoid delays and refusals. So if you want professional experience support to navigate your PR journey with confidence, please consider us at AV Immigration. We're here to make it simple and effective for you. But again, at the end of the day, I also want to throw out and say that if you're very confident about your application, you don't need to hire anyone else. It's not required to have a professional representative for you to submit your application to IRCC or to the province. If your needs are different and you want to explore hiring us to support and professionally represent you, don't hesitate to reach out and contact us. Okay. All right. So thank you for taking the time to join us today. So I hope this webinar valuable and also have given you a lot of insights on how you can prepare for the AIP application if this is one of your consideration. So we'll just check in quickly, see if there are any questions before we wrap up. Hmm. So I don't think we have any questions in the chat right now, but if you have one, you can put in your questions now in the chat. Okay. So it looks like we don't have any questions right now. However, in the future, if you do have one and you're interested to also schedule a free 15-minute consultation with us, you can send us an email at info@avimmigration.ca. You can visit our website for our appointment link in there, or you can always call us at any time. Okay. So thank you so much for joining us for today. And again, next week, we're going to have the Express Entry as our next webinar for the series. So we hope to see you there again. And thank you for spending your afternoon with us today. You have a wonderful rest of your night. Thank you.